What's going on, Workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're going to be talking about retention mechanics in MMOs, namely dailies. I've been kind of on this kick of the thought that maybe what if MMOs didn't have dailies anymore? What if that system went away? And we've been talking about it on stream. But as well, one of the things that came up on stream today was people don't know we're actually on Spotify, iTunes, and all of that. So we'll be having one of the top links outside of the Twitch for our Spotify if you guys want to go check out the audio only version of the podcast. We've been doing them here, kind of breaking them up into clips, hosting them on GGR, Ginger Gaming Radio, and also they're still remaining up on the audio only version. So if you guys like, those roll out a couple of days after the video versions. So hopefully you enjoy. Chris, dailies, good, bad, happy, sad. What are your thoughts? Where do you stand with this topic?
I mean, retention mechanics are in games because they work. They make us log into mobile games regularly. They help us establish a habit, right? You're giving somebody a reward for showing up for 2 to 3 weeks in a row. And when you go read about how to form good and healthy habits or how to break bad habits that you'd like to change, that 2 to 3 week number kind of comes up that same way. And so when they're like, hey, if you log in for 21 days in a row, we'll thank you. Well, of course they'll thank you. You've established a habit out of playing their game. So like on one hand, the cynical part of me says they're just there because they make money.
Okay.
On the other hand, like when I want something big in a game, right? I want a big mount collection or a mount that's locked behind a big achievement, something that helps me get to another mount a little more each day does get me to my goals. Sometimes the goals I want to get to, leveling up a character feels so far away. Leveling up an alt feels so far away. You know, you have your one character that you've gotten all the way through MSQ, and you inspect somebody and they have all their classes at cap in Final Fantasy or something like that, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I could never get there. And checking in once a day and doing just a little thing and getting a huge reward for it, it actually makes a pretty big dent. And so it is a nice reminder that like you don't have to do it all in one day. You can get a lot done in a year or in 2 years if you just do a little of something each and every day, and it's a good reminder of that. So I think it depends on how you use them. They are probably ultimately why I quit WoW the first time.
Okay.
Was I got to where I was engaging in so many aspects of what they do to retain you as a player that it was starting to feel like a job.
Mm-hmm. So the way I kind of view them, because like in based off your kind of summary, this is my own like kind of personality. Their dailies are kind of like this. Like for me, I like oatmeal raisin cookies, so I'm going to say oatmeal raisin cookie. But insert whatever your favorite cookie or treat is as a necessary, like a treat. It's something to get you to come in. Oh, absolutely, I'll stop by and get my free cookie today. But the problem is that over time, over the course of let's say 2 months or 3 months, eventually you look down at your body and you're like, how have I packed on all this weight, and why don't I necessarily feel as good about this experience that I once did, right? Because essentially it's this high reward, low effort, just log in, almost to the point where I think dailies are slightly better than the login reward that you would see in typical free-to-play games. Just for opening the app, here we go. Here's your treasure box, and in 5 days, if you keep logging in, you're going to have this. So it's dailies themselves at least have some level of human interaction as opposed to like the bare minimum of clicking on, hi, I'd like to launch this app. But I think essentially they're both as damaging to the user experience in the long term. Like it's kind of, in my mind, it's short term versus long term thinking. And this is the debate that's been raging on in my head. So I appreciate you for humoring me. I asked you the question, and it really kind of, and this is kind of the question I asked Chris, and I'm really asking you all this now, is that, but what if dailies didn't exist and instead all of that stuff, the reason to log in, that reward, that cookie that you're getting was just tradable on the markets, that you could just literally, like if you wanted to do like log in and farm up that material, you could sell it for massive profits because obviously there is a demand for that.
Sure.
Because that's the carrot on the stick that's getting you back in. What if we took out that artificial daily incentive and just gave that back to the players in terms of the market and let the players decide its value for that aspect? And that's just what I ended up kind of falling in on, because that's kind of what I'm looking forward to with the upcoming New World. I hope there's no quote unquote daily retention mechanic to keep me logging in artificially, like you said, and do my chores. It all kind of comes down to is we've like people don't call them dailies. I think the fact that I'm probably going to put dailies in the title of this video's title, people are going to be like, I think you mean chores, Brian. I log in to do my chores, the things that I have to do in order to achieve this bigger goal. I just kind of at a point where I'm like, and go ahead, because the option is just not to do them.
We saw some of what you're describing. A big wave of it during Stormblood was with Namatsu. It was a major source of storm sap. Storm sap was needed by the market as a whole. You could get storm sap yourself running dailies, and people wanted to consume it either at faster rates than they could get it themselves, or in many cases, people told me, I don't want to buy my own storm. I don't want to go get my own storm sap. I'll just pay you. And so there was kind of a currency that was being exchanged. You would trade your coins in on this vendor for whatever item is worth the most on your market board, right? And storm sap was the one in question here, but like there's a number of other materials that are available on these in trade for your daily token that you get for doing each quest. That does start to allow you to kind of convert it into what has the most value to the server. But I think part of what you're tapping in on here is an adjacent mechanic, which is catch-up mechanics.
Yes, that's true.
That is a near sibling of this. And so when you talk about leveling in, when you do your first roulette of the day, you get this huge reward, right? When you do your first dungeon of the day, you get this massive reward, especially if you do it as an adventurer in need, right? That we need tanks, we need healers, and WoW and 14 both do this in their own way, and giving you this huge reward. WoW's their daily calling, you actually only have to do it every 3 days, and you can save them up. So you could kind of do 3 sets of dailies every 3 days, or 1 every day, or any combination thereof, because they last for 3 days and they kind of expire. That way, if you want to take the weekend off of the game, or I don't play on Tuesdays, you don't get behind, because they do act as a catch-up mechanic. They do act as a place to give people currencies towards easy catch-up gear, making sure they have currency that just covers like their daily needs for kind of like a UBI, like a basic amount of gold or gil in a game. And the reason you don't make that unlimited, the reason that you cap that at a daily reset or weekly reset,
people have learned that
is because I'm doing this full time now, and so I play this game. I'll play 14 anywhere between 14 and 30 hours in a week. And so, like, Brian, it would not be fun to play with me if I was allowed to just get everything week 1. They put 30 hours worth of stuff behind the new raid that comes with 5.5. And you're like, Chris, let's run it together. It's only been out for a week. I already got everything. Well, no, it's only been out since last Tuesday.
Yeah.
I got it all. I ran it 45 times in a week, and now I'm done for the next 15 weeks until the next patch. And so that's just not okay.
But right? if those materials were then market tradable, you running it another 45 times is essentially feeding your coffers, because there is a demand for that for those who only maybe want to run it 5 times. Like,
then that shifts into, what do I do with the money?
Right.
If you give me something of value, I get further and further ahead, right? And now I become a billionaire. And so I become Eorzean's Jeff Bezos, and I'm so far ahead, you'll never catch me. But if you don't give me anything of value, then I tell you, I understand I can sell the tokens. I don't want to run it again.
Right.
I ran it 45 times, and that's good. By the time I finish Delibram for all 4 of my relics, I will have run Delibram 60 times, plus the number of times I ran it before I unlocked that quest, which is 3 or 4 or something like that. I will have run 63 times of the same 30-minute to an hour raid. I could be done. Like, I don't want to run it again.
Yeah.
And so them saying, hey, slow down. Why don't you? It's really only worth it your first 2 or 3 times out of the week. Says like, okay, like I'll just take a break and I'll come back next week. And so it also paces people so that they don't burn out, so that they can release content at a pace where you only have to release a patch every 16 weeks or whatever. And you can actually stay in a patch for 16 weeks instead of all of us playing 100 hours the first week, being frustrated at the game, getting bored with the game, taking a break, and then 15 weeks goes by and that same set of habits kicks in. Now I'm playing something else. So then it circles back to the original thing where they're no longer retaining players, because players are like, I played that. It was really boring after the first 600 hours in 5 days. And it's like,
So obviously, I think it's in the context of Final Fantasy XIV, they're not going to get rid of that system. It's also a nice system in which that it introduces us to different zones, different kind of characters. They actually tie it into a story specifically. But the reason it's kind of like you kind of hit the nail on the head, in my opinion. What to do with the money? Like, if there was always a need for gil, there was always some form of gil sync that you're like, yeah, like I have 1 billion gil, but the next step is 2 billion gil on this other random thing that I can do. Then there's that that market economy that we have currently in the game, which I don't see changing all that much in the grand scheme of things, being the life and the where 14 is. So don't think it's as much as I would love to see the market and the economy become more of a player driven economy. I don't see that we're going to have that shift. We had that back in 1.0. We're not going to have that at least in the near future for Final Fantasy XIV in its current iteration and trajectory. But that system demands a daily, because there's so much stuff that is market restricted outside of a few things and materials and crafting. Yeah, like you don't want to sit here and end up flooding the market with, and then all of a sudden have a sea of billionaire gil holders with nothing to buy and nothing that they need, because that would then also inflate prices on the in the system itself. And actually, I think if you follow it to its conclusion, increase the need for new players to go out and break terms of service and purchase gil just to afford like the bare necessities of getting started in some degree. So it is kind of a complex problem.
Or you do what games do now, and you create NPCs handing you gil from an unlimited source, and you have rampant inflation in these games.
Mm-hmm.
And so then basically you just are on a slower form of a gear treadmill for people with gil. Yeah. It's hard to get 1 billion gil today. It's less hard 2 years from now. It's less hard 2 years after that. And eventually it's not hard at all. Mm-hmm. So like that's your alternative. So that's where this goes, is this conversation. Like I understand the frustration, but if you follow each line of thought to its conclusion, you quickly realize like it's hard to come up with a better solution that is not a solution on the surface, and then eventually triggers another set of fixes over here.
Yeah.
And then another set of fixes over there. How we got here, the reason all these games have this is because it works. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's the best. It doesn't mean we can't innovate and improve on this. I think WoW's 3 callings a day is a better step than just old school dailies. I think World Quest is better than doing the same 4 quests over and over, but unfortunately, eventually you've also seen all of those. I think once you finish a reputation with somebody, the ability to continue start getting like loot boxes where there's an unlimited experience bar, but there is a soft cap where it's like, once you get here, you can be done if you want, but if you keep going, you continue to get rewards. I think there's a lot about that system I like. I like that 14 still hard caps things. The number of collectibles I can turn in a week stop me from burning myself out. I can only do 2 quest givers sets of 2 times 3. So I can only do my 12 turn-ins and then I'm done. And that's it. I can only do 12 beast tribes per day. Cap it to stop me from eating myself sick. Because when I quit WoW, I was getting to the point where to feel productive in a day between dailies and clearing stuff for Lore Master, I was pushing 100 quests a day. No wonder I hated it.
It's so interesting. It's such a human psychology thing, because Yoshi P has been asked before to have the dailies uncapped, or have them, if you miss a day,
do it.
Stack up. And he was like, no.
Leave quests do that.
Leave quests do, but there is still a cap of 100. The problem with leave quests, I think we talked about this in the fall, is what do you do? Like I have no need for them, and that's something I wish that existed. Like, I wish there was some piece of activity or content in this game that cost 100 leave quests now, thing. Just some ridiculous thing that it's like, cool, every 2 weeks you can do this thing, and that's kind of a natural kind of piece of it. So I'm not calling for or advocating that dailies should be removed from 14, because that's just not going to happen. However, like if we talk about like Square Enix's next MMO, I kind of wondering to see like what a new MMO would look like if they didn't have that kind of system, but then they had the framework and the foundation to support more of a player-driven kind of environment, so that the incentive is actually more on the fact that, like, I would love to see us have the ability to farm fates for different drops, whether that would be lockboxes or more. The skirmish system is what I love it as a part of Bosha. I want that kind of in the whole world itself, just to have that cohesiveness. But the core of it is like, at some point, like, if you can't trade whatever that drops in the market, like, there's no real incentive. You know, if the market doesn't have a demand for that item, then there's no incentive to go and do those things. So that has to, you're 100% right. It has to be looked at very holistically and how these things engage. And the reason why it's so popular, the reason why it's so used is because of human psychology, is because it works. And then they tie certain rewards behind it that are so valuable. And then they limit it because we would keep going back to that cookie jar.
Oh yeah.
1,000 times a day. And then eventually we're like, I don't like this at all. I don't have any fun. All I do is do my chore, and it never ends. It's a never ending chore. I never have that sense of like, I finished my chores for the day. I wish it wasn't kind of mindset chores. I look forward to hopefully a better system at some point in the future. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up to you, Chris, and just to the Work to Game, nation. I don't know why I said nation.
You'd have to bake something in. You'd have to bake something in. You'd have to build a game with a different form of ongoing progression in it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting into Guild Wars 2 this time, because my understanding is that the gear progression at the top end has lateral progression. And lateral progression leaves you more endlessly hungry. As opposed to forward progression feels like either if I'm not going to use it, I'll just wait for the next step and skip this one.
Yeah.
Or I've caught up. I mean, my warrior is almost to the point where like there isn't much else I want to do with my warrior. People are like, well, you could go into savage. Yes, but I don't want to. So I am at my version of best in slot. I'm as far as I'm going to go. I don't want to go any further. I'll just wait for 5.5 on April 13th and get gear handed to me. So
well, that actually means
I'm at.
So guys, stay tuned tomorrow where Chris and I will debate and discuss Final Fantasy XIV's gear treadmill and if it's worth it. So if you made it to this point in the video, you now know what's the next topic is going to be coming up. So also keep your topics coming. Be sure you can tweet at us. You can leave them in the comments. We're still collecting those. We should bring back the wheel of topics here at some point here in the future. Now, once we kind of get past 5.5 and get into May and more. I do want to say shout out to Luigi. Thank you so much for liking the tweet about the Samurai controller guide. That did go up this week. He says, thanks for this. I play Sam on PC with the controller, and this helps me big time. So Luigi, thank you for following us on Twitter, and thanks for hitting the like button on the tweet itself. Guys, Chris, you got any final thoughts? Anything we didn't touch on that you want to share before we wrap up? I know you just posted
if we're just saving Easter eggs for the end to self promo, then I will tell you that the third episode of A Realm Revoiced, me voice acting all of ARR, went live this week.
Yes, guys, go give that a watch. Chris is working his way all through ARR. And I think it's really exciting to see his take. If you guys want some more spicy takes as he learns about the Warrior Line and the story of ARR, be sure to give that some support so he can go and it helps him. Just go leave him a comment and saying howdy on those videos, because that helps motivate him to keep plugging away and keep going forward. So it's really important. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. We'll see you tomorrow. I think tomorrow will be a spicy topic as well. So let us know what you think as always in the comments. And for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you have a fantastic day, and we hope to see you soon. But until then,
take care.